I believe that every child can learn, even if they come with multiple disabilities with that deafness, or they come and they are just deaf, but I think they all can learn somehow, some way. So we work hard to try to make that happen. Why do you think that Granddad wanted to walk to a high hill? Why not low hill? Because the high hill, we can stand and see everything below. If it's a low hill, you won't be able to see because of the trees and everything. So, my favorite, it's best. Mole says my favorite. Woo! We go up and walk. Good. The beautiful trees. We walk for a long time. Very good.
I wish that all teachers knew that deaf students are very capable, and just to hold them to the same expectations they would any child.
Okay, and how about over here? Who wants to share?
I think he's in the middle of nowhere and he's just having dreams.
Any particular dreams?
Maybe he's in like a boat or something and he gets shot out of it into a tree.
Okay.
He wakes up and he sees where he is. He looks around.
All right,
He
let's.
doesn't know where he is.
Okay, let's see.
Treat them just like any other child. If they're not paying attention or not doing what they're supposed to do, the teacher needs to treat them just like everybody else. Sometimes I think people think, oh, it's the poor deaf child, and they tend to give them a lot more room when it comes to discipline and stuff a lot of times. And also academically, most of the children, not all, but a lot of the children here have pretty good language and are doing very well in the classroom. And just, try to remember to treat them the same you would any other child as far as what you expect from them as academically, homework, reading, their math, anything else with other classes.
The most important thing is to have high expectations for the deaf student. Although deaf students are extremely individual in terms of the previous background that they've had, whether or not they've had any type of early intervention, does the child come from a home in which the parents know signing if they've selected signing for the child? Does the child come from a background where English is not the child's home language? So there are many different factors that are involved in thinking about what's appropriate for a deaf student. The family, of course, is the biggest determiner of that in terms of mode of communication and family support. But I would say generally for a regular classroom teacher to have high expectations of a deaf student, but realize that deaf students enter schooling with different types of knowledge, different types of experiences.
I think the regular classroom teacher, in order to educate the deaf student, really needs to know about that student, just like she would the hearing students in the classroom. Get to know the background about the student, because that plays an important role when the child comes in day after day. I also think it's important for them to learn about deaf culture and what that brings with the child, as well as deafness itself. How greatly deafness impacts the language with the deaf child. The regular teacher needs to learn about the mode of communication that child may use. Some of our students use American Sign Language, some use more Pidgin, but it would be important for them to understand that there is a difference.
I would probably advise a regular classroom teacher to consult with the teacher of the deaf who probably has the primary information about the student. I do think it's very important that the regular classroom teacher knows what are the child's interests. Is the child interested in sports? What type of activities does the family do? Because that way you could make some real life connections and lessons to what the child is interested in, and therefore the information, the heavy academic information is going to be more accessible to them and more relatable to them.
When I've taken sign language classes, a lot of the first things they did was kind of dispel a lot of the rumors people think about deaf people, that deaf people can't drive and they read Braille, or they think, they're just a lot of silly little things that oftentimes people don't know and don't realize.
I had one regular ed teacher who did share that, she didn't realize how, often profoundly deaf kids will make little noises. And, I was like, well, that's good to know, because then, if we do have a teacher who's never had a deaf child, it's good to let them know, well, they might make these little noises because, they're not totally silent.
Ask Ryan.
We do a lot of teaching the pragmatics of language, and, what's appropriate to say and what's not appropriate, and responses you give to people for questions they might ask. And so we do lots of role playing and try to work on the social skills, because they have to be taught. Some of the other factors are really learning the child as an individual. Some of our children need just a little bit. Some of our children have greater needs, and that, the regular ed teacher knows what those are and is sensitive to that. And some of it, we learn by doing. In some of the grades, they may play a variety of games to learn, concepts like Jeopardy and things like that. So we've learned that, in order for the deaf student to be successful and to participate, you've got to give the lag time, because the interpreter has to, sign some things. And so we change how you might play the game, or the teacher might have to count to 3 before anybody can push the buzzer. So I find the willingness of a teacher to make those changes and to accommodate that, I have a child that has special needs in the classroom. That is just a great thing.